Okay, next instalment on how to make a slip cast mould. Today we're going to look at how to create a slip cast mould, and we're going to add to our hammer collection by slip casting or potentially making a mould of this lump hammer. Now when we first find an object that we want to slip cast, there's a number of things we have to do. We have to think about undercuts and what might actually stop this thing coming out of the slip cast mould. And we have to think about how the most efficient way of making a mould is. And this just comes with knowledge and experience. So if you were to come to myself or Ray and say, Tom, I want to make a slip cast mould out of this plastic bottle. Well, a plastic bottle is really quite simple. This would be a 3-piece mould. It's actually got a cast line on a plastic bottle, so you can see the halfway point. So it would have 2 sides and then a piece off the bottom, which would make it a 3-piece mould. But before you attempt to do anything, and before you get confidence, make sure you come and ask myself or Ray how many pieces or what we would advise to do it. So we have to think about how we're going to cast this. And actually when you're casting something that's square or rectangular, it's much easier to do it on the diagonal. So on this piece we want to be able to remove the moulds away diagonally either side. So with a Sharpie, I'm just going to draw that diagonal line in just to remind me, and we're going to go along this line here, down. We're going to go halfway down the handle, is that right? Thus. And the reason why I've drawn that line on there is just to give me a bit of reference, because what we have to do, the first part of this is to be able to cast half of this object. We've got to bury half of it in clay. So we've got some nice soft clay here. The first thing I'm going to do, and I've noticed a couple of things, is try and level that handle off, just to make it a little bit easier. I've also got a couple of bits of texture on here that are also going to be problematic, so I'm just going to fill those with clay because we don't want plaster to go in those little holes there. And also on the base of this there's another indent that actually marks the weight of the hammer. It's a 2-pound lump hammer we're doing today, because that will also act as an undercut. So we just fill it slightly with clay, and then what we've got to do is we're going to bury the lump hammer in clay to create the first half of our mould. And it doesn't take long. We're going to keep the clay in line with that Sharpie mark. And you see I've already made it slightly easier on myself, whereas I've chosen a board that is a similar size to the size of mould that we want to make. And when we're slip casting, like I said on the dropout mould, we want the thickness of the plaster to be about 2 fingers away from the edge of your work. Obviously with the handle we're going to have a little bit more, but it will still be 2 fingers depth. And really rough the clay in there quite quickly to start off with. I've seen some students take absolutely hours and hours and hours over this. It doesn't need to take that long. You should really be able to do a mould in at least an afternoon or a day. You don't really want it to be taking more than a couple of days, because you start getting problems with actually the plaster drying out at different rates. You want to try and get the whole job done as quick as you can. Split the hand in half, haven't I? Need to add more clay on that. That's not halfway, is it?
Well, gone way too high.
No, I am. I'm just hard to. Now, if that line there is wrong. Hope I can take the sound out. Should be okay, shouldn't it? It'll still come out. I want in the undercut round there. Should still come out. Also, I think it's probably because when I do this, I teach it over a whole afternoon.
Yeah.
Whereas we're trying to do it in
Quick as possible.
quick as possible. Because we want to go home. Tiny little sausage under there.